Last month, I uploaded a video of myself playing through a level of Mega Man X for the Cartridge Club, which is basically a Book of the Month club, but with video games. It's run by the guys over at Cartridge Bros, a YouTube gaming channel that I highly recommend checking out. January's game for the Cartridge Club is Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation 1. It's also available for download on the Xbox Live Arcade, the PlayStation Network, or on the PSP as half of the Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles, along with Castlevania Rondo of Blood, which was a Japanese exclusive game on the TurboGrafx CD, until that compilation was released points westward of Japan. There's also a Japanese exclusive Sega Saturn version of Symphony of the Night for you importers out there. The plot focuses around Alucard, the son of Dracula, whose name is a direct reference to the 1940s Universal horror movie, Son of Dracula, one of many references to such movies in the Castlevania franchise over the years. Anyway, Alucard is off to kick his dad's ass and put a stop to his bullshit, but before that, we get to fight the final boss from Rondo of Blood as Richter Belmont, the protagonist from that game, who I never used after I unlocked Maria pretty early on. Yeah, I know, I'm a sissy for using the little girl in the dress who throws the birdies at the forces of evil and darkness, but, you know, she's pretty much the game's easy mode. And even then, the game's still one hard son of a bitch. Fortunately, the same can't be said about this fight. It's easy. In fact, it's quite literally impossible to lose this fight. If you run out of health, Maria runs in and casts a spell that makes you invincible. I love this fight from a cinematic standpoint. Instead of telling you that Richter defeated Dracula, or even showing you that he defeated Dracula, you do it yourself. It's also fun because of the horrendous voice work that precedes it.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh. I was called here by humans who wish to pay me tribute.
Tribute? You steal men's souls and make them your slaves.
Perhaps the same could be said of all religions.
Your words are as empty as your soul. Mankind ill needs a savior such as you.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. Have at you!
Now that is actually some of my favorite hammy voice acting ever. You don't hear hack voice work like that anymore. That's something that's pretty much exclusive to the early days of voice acting in video games.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
And low-budget, ultra-violent crap anime from the early 90s that you can only find on VHS tapes or on YouTube in its entirety.
Die, you imperialist vermin! Ah!
Don't look so surprised. I'm your fucking backup.
Angel Cop, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, now back to Symphony of the Night. The real game starts off with Alucard equipped with some pretty powerful weapons and armor, and it lets you try those out for a little while. You're decimating giant wolves, zombies, and other enemies like nobody's business. You feel powerful. Then, after a certain point, death shows up and takes all your weapons, leaving you to face Dracula's hordes with nothing but your fists. Thankfully, you pick up a sword from the first skeleton warrior you encounter, but you're not nearly as powerful as you were. This gives the player a taste of how badass Alucard can be, and a desire to get a bunch of other weapons and armor and abilities, magic spells, what have you, so that they're as badass as they were at the start of the game. So now that we've gotten the basic summary out of the way, let's talk about how the game itself operates. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is what you would call Metroidvania. Basically an action platformer with a strong emphasis on exploration, highly interconnected areas, and power-ups used to get around obstacles. Symphony of the Night is not the first Castlevania game to go this route, being preceded almost a decade earlier by Castlevania II: Simon's Quest. The difference is that Symphony of the Night isn't a confusing, poorly conceived mess that absolutely requires you to have a strategy guide to make heads or tails of it. It can be a bit confusing at times to figure out where you're supposed to go next in Symphony of the Night, but you can generally just wander around until you find your destination. instead of having to figure out that when some random idiot told you to hit Deborah Cliff with your head to make a hole meant to hold the red crystal and crouch down in front of that cliff for a few seconds while you wait for a tornado to come along and take you and your little doggy away to the land of Oz. Now, Symphony of the Night can be confusing, but it's not as bad as the franchise's previous attempt at this, because they learned from games from around the time of Simon's Quest's release and before Symphony of the Nights, such as Bionic Commando, Zillion and Wonder Boy 3 on the Sega Master System, the Gargoyles Quest trilogy, and of course the 3 Metroid games out at that time, just to name a few. Konami learned from their mistakes, took what worked in Simon's Quest, took out what didn't, and looked to other games that had the same formula that they were going for, and they made an exceptionally good game with all of those elements. Symphony of the Night is one of the best Metroidvanias, and it is right up there with Super Metroid as the 2 defining games in this subgenre, as well as 2 of its best. If you're thinking about getting a copy yourself, the most obvious route would of course be the original release on the PlayStation 1. Copies of that go for $20 to $30. There's the original release, and a later Greatest Hits collection release. The only difference is that the Greatest Hits re-release has a green label instead of a black one, and the disc doesn't look as cool as the standard release. There's also the Japanese exclusive Sega Saturn version. Prices vary on that one. A look at eBay's completed listing shows that it generally goes for anywhere between $30 and $80, not counting shipping. The PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade versions go for $10 a piece, and give you the standard PS1 version. Worthwhile if you don't need the actual physical disc. And then there's the PSP version, which shouldn't run you more than $10. This is probably the one to get if you have a PSP. Mostly because you also get Rondo of Blood on it, or rather a 2.5D remake of it. Rondo of Blood is a fantastic game as well, pretty easily my favorite of the classic Castlevanias. The other bonus is that in Symphony of the Night, after you beat the game, you can play as Richter by starting a new game and entering your name in as Richter, or as Maria by entering your name in as Maria. In the original PS1 version, you could only do this for Richter. You could get both Richter and Maria in the Saturn version, however. There are 2 downsides to the PSP version in my mind, but they're admittedly very minor nitpicks. The first is that you have to unlock Symphony of the Night, but it really doesn't make you go out of your way to do it. I just think that it's unnecessary to have it be an unlockable. It should be available right from the start. Just give me the damn game and stop jerking me around. I mean, especially if you're advertising this as a compilation of the 2 games. The other complaint that I have is that they changed the iconically bad voice acting that precedes the opening fight between Richter and Dracula.
Dracula, die now and leave this world. You'll never belong here.
Oh, but this world invited me. Your own kind called me forth with praise and tribute.
Tribute? You're a thief. You steal men's souls, their freedom.
Freedom is always sacrificed to faith, good hunter. Or are you truly here by choice?
All I'm here for is you. To hell with your heresy! You're nothing but a blight on mankind.
Ha! Mankind. A cesspit of hatred and lies. Fight for them then, and die for their sins!
I guess you could say that that's better? I mean, it's still really bad, but it just isn't the same. It's not as funny. It just... I mean, a cesspit of hatred and lies doesn't have the same ring to it as a miserable little pile of secrets. It's like they were trying to make it good, which misses the entire point of why it was fun to begin with. But it's still pretty amusingly bad.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets.